The lake house glowed under the Connecticut stars, the air thick with pine and betrayal. I gripped the birthday cake, its candles unlit, my hands steady despite the tremor in my chest. Through the half-open door I saw her, Lisa, my daughter-in-law, tangled with a man who wasn't my son. Her laugh sliced the night. I could have screamed, shattered the moment. Instead, I turned, the cake slipping in my hands, and swore she'd pay for breaking my family. The gravel crunched under my heels as I approached the lake house, the birthday cake balanced in my hands. Kevin's 35th. I'd spent hours choosing the frosting, imagining his smile. The Connecticut evening wrapped around me, heavy with pine and the promise of celebration. My son, my only son, deserved this. I'd given everything for him. My career, my savings, my dreams. The house Lisa and Kevin lived in? My money. My sacrifice. I shifted the cake, the plastic wrap crinkling like a whisper. The lake house door was ajar, a sliver of yellow light spilling onto the porch. Laughter floated out. Lisa's, bright and sharp, followed by a deeper chuckle. Not Kevin's. My steps slowed. The air felt wrong, too still. I nudged the door with my elbow, the hinges groaning like a warning. Inside, the world tilted. Lisa stood pressed against a man, her arms looped around his neck. His hands gripped her waist, bold and unapologetic. James Rivers, Jake, the local builder with a grin too slick for trust. His wedding ring glinted under the chandelier, mocking me. Lisa's hair fell loose, her blouse half unbuttoned, and she laughed again, head thrown back. They didn't see me. Not at first. The cake trembled in my hands. My throat burned, but I didn't scream. I couldn't. Not yet. Lisa's eyes flicked toward the door, catching mine. Her smile didn't falter. It sharpened like a blade. "Oh, Grace," she said, voice honeyed, as if I'd interrupted a casual chat. Jake stepped back, smirking, wiping his mouth like he'd just tasted something sweet. I wanted to hurl the cake, to watch it splatter across her perfect face. Instead, I turned, the doorframe digging into my shoulder as I stumbled out. The night swallowed me whole. The cake hit the passenger seat of my car with a soft thud, frosting smearing like a wound. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, and stared at the lake's dark shimmer. Lisa's laugh echoed in my skull. She thought she'd won, that I'd slink away broken. She didn't know me. Not the real me. I'd given her a home, a life, and she'd spat on it. My son's wife. My family. I'd spent decades building it, and she thought she could tear it down with a fling? The engine roared to life. I drove, the road blurring, my mind racing. I'd been a lawyer once, sharp and unrelenting, before I traded it for Kevin's future. I knew how to dig, how to plan, how to win. Lisa had no idea what was coming. Neither did Jake. The cake sat beside me, its candles unlit, a silent promise. They'd regret crossing me. I pulled into my driveway, the house dark and empty. My hands still shook, but not from shock. From purpose. I left the cake in the car, its sweetness souring in the night air, and stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind me, solid and final, like the first move in a game I'd already started to play. Lisa's house smelled of vanilla and lies. I sat on her pristine couch, the cushions too firm, like they resented my weight. She'd called me over the next morning, her voice syrupy through the phone, insisting we talk. The invitation felt like a trap, but I went. I needed to see her squirm, to gauge how much she knew I'd seen. She poured coffee, her movements deliberate, the ceramic mug clinking against the counter. Her nails, painted coral, gleamed under the kitchen light. "Grace, you look tired," she said, sliding the mug toward me. Her smile was a performance, all teeth and no warmth. "Rough night." I didn't touch the coffee. "You could say that." My voice stayed even, though my pulse hammered. The living room was a shrine to their life. Photos of her and Kevin on the mantle. The house I'd paid for framing their perfect lie. Kevin shuffled in, his shoulders hunched. My boy, once so bright, now looked like a man afraid of his own shadow. "Mom, what's this about?" he asked, not meeting my eyes. Lisa perched beside him, her hand on his knee, possessive. "I was at the lake house last night," I said, watching Lisa's face. Her smile didn't waver, but her fingers tightened on Kevin's leg. "For your birthday." "Oh, right." Kevin rubbed his neck, oblivious. "Sorry, we didn't know you'd come by." Lisa tilted her head, her voice soft as a blade. You should have called, Grace. We could have planned something proper. She leaned closer to Kevin, her perfume sharp. She's always so thoughtful, isn't she? Thoughtful. The word stung. A reminder of the years I'd poured into them. I'd handed Lisa a check for this house, my savings drained to give them a start. And now? She mocked me in my son's home. Mom, don't make a big deal, Kevin said, his tone pleading. Lisa's been stressed. Work, you know? Let's not fight. Stressed. I almost laughed. Stressed enough to tangle with Jake Rivers while her husband planned his birthday dinner? I wanted to shake Kevin, to scream that his wife was a snake. But I didn't. Not yet. Lisa's eyes flicked to mine, daring me to speak. I held her gaze, letting her wonder what I knew. I'm not here to fight, I said, standing. Just checking in. I grabbed my purse, the leather cool against my palm. I'll see you both soon. Lisa's smile faltered just for a second. Good. Let her sweat. I drove to the town's only cafe, the one where gossip brewed faster than the coffee. The bell jingled as I entered, heads turning. A neighbor, Mrs. Carter, gave me a curious glance, her lips pursed. Word was spreading already. Small towns never slept. I slid into a booth, the vinyl creaking, and pulled out my notebook. The pen felt heavy, deliberate. I wrote one name, Jake Rivers. The waitress set a coffee down, steam curling like a secret. I stared at the page, my mind sharpening. Lisa thought she could play me. Kevin thought he could hide behind her. They were wrong. The clock on the cafe wall ticked, each second a step closer to their unraveling. I tapped the pen against the paper, the rhythm steady like a heartbeat waiting to strike. My house was too quiet, the kind of silence that pressed against your skin. I stood in my study, the air thick with dust and memory. Shelves lined the walls, legal books I hadn't touched in decades. Their spines cracked from ambition I'd buried for Kevin. I ran my fingers over a volume of contract law, the leather cool and unyielding. Once I'd been unstoppable. A lawyer with a future. Then came motherhood, then Lisa, then the check that emptied my savings for their house. I sank into the chair, the wood creaking. A memory hit, sharp as a blade. 5 years ago, Lisa sat across from me in this very room, her smile practiced. It's so generous, Grace, she'd said, folding the check for their down payment. Her eyes hadn't met mine, not really. I thought it was gratitude. Now I knew better, cold calculation. The phone felt heavy in my hand. I dialed Mary Evans, my oldest friend, the only one I trusted not to gossip. Her voice crackled through, warm but wary. Grace, you okay? You sound off. I need a favor, I said, keeping it short. Can you check on someone for me? James Rivers. Mary paused, the silence heavy. Jake? The builder? Why? Just do it. Please. I didn't explain. Not yet. All right, she said, her tone shifting to that old sly edge. But you owe me coffee. My office, 1 hour. I hung up, my gaze drifting to the books. They weren't just relics, they were weapons. I'd forgotten how to wield them, but not for long. I grabbed my coat, the fabric brushing my wrists like a promise, and drove to Mary's office in town. Her space was cramped, papers stacked like a fortress. Mary leaned back in her chair, her glasses perched on her nose. Jake Rivers, she said, tossing a file onto the desk. Married 2 kids, owns half the construction projects in town. Word is, he's not exactly a saint. Shady deals may be worse. I flipped through the file, my pulse quickening. A photo of Jake stared back, his grin smug. Married. Of course. Lisa wasn't his first game, just the latest. Anything concrete? I asked. Not yet, Mary said, eyeing me. Grace, what's this about? You're scaring me. I didn't answer. I couldn't, not until I had more. Keep digging, I said, standing. And keep it quiet. Mary raised an eyebrow but nodded. You're playing with fire, you know. Good, I said. Let it burn. Back home, I sat at my desk, the notebook open. Jake's name stared up at me, joined now by a single word. Leverage. I smiled, the first real one in days. The books around me seemed to hum, their pages whispering strategies I'd long forgotten. Lisa thought she could outsmart me. Jake thought he was untouchable. They'd learn. I scribbled a note, the pen scratching like a blade carving my intent. The clock on the wall ticked, steady and relentless. Outside, the Connecticut night pressed against the windows, dark and waiting. I leaned back, the chair creaking, and let the plan take shape. The first move was mine. The glow of my desk lamp cast shadows across the photos, grainy but unmistakable. Lisa and Jake caught in the lake house's dim light, their silhouettes too close, too reckless. I'd paid a kid from town, some tech-savvy teenager, to pull the images from a hidden camera I'd planted after that night. My hands didn't shake as I slid the prints into a manila envelope, the paper crisp against my fingers. The address was simple. Emily Rivers, Jake's wife. No return label. No trace. I drove to the post office, the envelope tucked under my coat like a secret. The clerk barely glanced up, her stamp machine thumping rhythmically. Next day delivery? She asked, chewing gum. I nodded, my pulse steady. The envelope vanished into the mail slot, a quiet promise of chaos. I stepped back into the Connecticut morning, the air sharp with autumn, and felt lighter. The first move was done. That evening I sat in the corner of the Rusty Spoon, the town's upscale restaurant, nursing a glass of water. The place buzzed with clinking glasses and forced laughter, the kind of spot where reputations were polished or shattered. Emily Rivers walked in, her face tight, a stack of photos clutched in her manicured hand. Jake trailed behind, his usual swagger gone. I sipped my water, the glass cold against my lips, and watched. You thought I wouldn't find out? Emily's voice cut through the dining room, sharp enough to silence nearby tables. She flung the photos onto their table, the images scattering like fallen leaves. Lisa's face stared up from one, her smile frozen in betrayal. Jake's hands shot up, defensive. It's not what it looks like. Don't lie to me. Emily's shout drew every eye. A waiter froze, tray wobbling. Jake's face reddened, his jaw tight, but he didn't dare look at the photos again. Emily stormed out, her heels clicking like gunfire. Jake slumped in his chair, head in his hands, the restaurant's hum resuming like a held breath released. My phone buzzed in my purse. I ignored it, but I knew who it was. Lisa. She'd have heard by now, would be scrambling to call Jake, to salvage her crumbling game. I pictured her pacing her perfect house, her coral nails digging into her palms. Jake wouldn't take her calls, not tonight. He'd be too busy saving his own skin. I left the restaurant, the night air cool against my face. Back home I sat at my desk, the lamp still burning. The notebook lay open, Jake's name crossed out with a single deliberate line. I wrote a new note. Lisa's turn. The pen felt like an extension of my will, each stroke carving out the next step. The house was silent, save for the faint tick of the clock on the mantel. I leaned back, the chair creaking under me, and let the satisfaction settle. Lisa didn't know it was me, not yet. But she'd feel the walls closing in. I tapped the pen against the notebook, the rhythm slow, deliberate. Outside, the wind stirred the trees, whispering secrets only I could hear. Lisa's house felt like a stage, every detail curated for effect. The coffee table gleamed, fresh flowers sat in a vase, and a family photo, her, Kevin, and a forced smile hung on the wall. She'd called me over, her voice dripping with concern, but I knew better. This was damage control. I sat on the edge of her couch, my hands folded, waiting for her to play her hand. Grace, I'm worried about you, Lisa said, her eyes wide with practiced sincerity. She leaned forward, a mug of tea steaming in her hands. You've been distant. And now these rumors? It's hurting Kevin. I almost laughed. Hurting Kevin. As if she hadn't done that herself. Tangled with Jake while my son planned his birthday. Rumors? I said, my voice calm. What kind? She sighed, setting the mug down with a delicate clink. People are saying I'm unfaithful. Can you imagine? It's cruel. Her gaze flicked to mine, testing. You were at the lake house, weren't you? Did you see something? I held her stare, letting the silence stretch. She wanted me to crack, to admit what I knew. Instead, I shrugged. I saw you and Jake. Laughing. Close. Her smile tightened, just for a second. Oh, Grace, that was nothing. Just friends catching up. She reached for my hand, but I pulled back. Her touch felt like a snake's. Kevin walked in, his shoulders slouched, eyes red. My heart twisted. My boy caught in her web. Mom, why are you doing this? He said, voice low. Lisa's trying. You're making it worse. Doing what? I asked, standing. Checking on my son? You're stirring things up, he snapped, then softened, rubbing his face. Just stop, okay? We're fine. Fine. The word burned. I wanted to shake him, to scream that his wife was a liar. But Lisa watched, her lips curved in a faint, victorious smile. I grabbed my purse, the leather strap biting into my palm. I'll leave you to it, I said and walked out, the door clicking shut like a judgment. Sunday morning, the church was packed, the air thick with perfume and whispers. I sat in my usual pew, but the space around me felt empty. Mrs. Carter, who'd once shared her hymn book, turned away. Another neighbor leaned toward her friend, their murmurs sharp. Grace is spreading lies. I caught the words like needles. Lisa's work. She'd spun a story, painted me as the bitter mother-in-law, unhinged and jealous. I left before the sermon ended, the church doors heavy as I pushed through. Rain fell in sheets, soaking my coat as I walked home. The town felt smaller, its streets closing in. Lisa thought she'd cornered me, turned my own son against me. She was wrong. In my study, I pulled a folder from the desk drawer, its edges worn. Inside were papers I hadn't touched in years, records, notes, fragments of a life I'd left behind. The rain tapped the window, steady and relentless. I opened the folder, my fingers brushing the top page. Lisa's lies wouldn't protect her forever. I traced a line of text, my mind already turning, mapping the next move. The folder lay open on my desk, its contents spilling like secrets too long buried. Financial reports, scribbled notes, emails I'd printed years ago when Lisa first joined the town's charity fund. I'd helped her get the job, thinking it would ground her, give her purpose. Now the numbers stared back, irregular and damning. Deposits that didn't match donations, withdrawals too neatly timed. Lisa hadn't just betrayed Kevin. She'd betrayed the town. I sipped my coffee, the mug warm against my palms, and circled a figure in red ink. My legal training kicked in, the old instincts sharp despite the years. This wasn't just carelessness. It was theft. I closed the folder, the paper rustling like a warning, and grabbed my keys. Mary would know more. She always did. Her office was a maze of files and coffee stains, the air thick with ink and ambition. Mary leaned back in her chair, her glasses catching the fluorescent light. "You're serious about this, aren't you?" she said, scanning the reports I'd brought. "Lisa's been skimming for months. Small amounts, but it adds up. She's clever, I'll give her that." "Clever's not enough," I said, my voice steady. "Can you get me the full ledgers?" Mary hesitated, her fingers tapping the desk. "Grace, this is dangerous. If Lisa finds out, she'll come for you. And Kevin," she trailed off, but I knew what she meant. My son still blind to his wife's games. "I'll handle Kevin," I lied, ignoring the ache in my chest. "Just get the ledgers." She sighed, nodding. "Give me a day. But you're buying the coffee next time." Her smile was thin, but it was enough. I left, the folder tucked under my arm, its weight a reminder of what was at stake. The cafe was crowded, the hum of conversation a shield as I slid into a booth. Across the room, Lisa sat with a friend, her laughter bright, her posture perfect. She looked untouched, as if Emily's outburst hadn't fazed her. My fingers tightened around my pen. She thought she'd won, that I'd back down. She didn't know I was just getting started. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years, a journalist, Tom Harper, who owed me a favor from my lawyer days. "Tom, it's Grace Thompson," I said, keeping my voice low. "I've got a story for you. Something big." His voice crackled through, curious. "What kind of story?" "The kind that exposes a thief," I said, my eyes on Lisa. She tilted her head, laughing again, oblivious. I hung up, the phone cool against my cheek. The cafe's clock ticked above the counter, its hands steady, relentless. I opened my notebook, adding Tom's name to the page. The plan was growing, its pieces falling into place like stones in a wall, ready to crush Lisa's perfect world. The editor's office smelled of ink and stale coffee, a dim bulb flickering overhead. I slid the manila envelope across the counter, my gloved fingers leaving no trace. Inside were copies of Lisa's doctored financial reports, redacted just enough to protect my source, Mary. "For Tom Harper," I said, my voice low. The clerk nodded, barely looking up from her crossword. I stepped into the chilly Connecticut dawn, the envelope's weight gone, replaced by a spark of anticipation. By morning, Lisa's world would crack. The newspaper hit the stands at 7. I grabbed a copy from the cafe, the headline screaming, "Charity Fund Embezzlement Rocks Town." Lisa's name wasn't in bold. Not yet, but the details were damning. Missing donations, suspicious transfers. The town would connect the dots. I folded the paper, tucking it under my arm, and settled into a booth. The cafe buzzed, forks clinking, voices rising. She was always too perfect, a woman at the next table muttered, her friend nodding. Bet it's Lisa. Who else? I sipped my coffee, the mug warm, and let their words wash over me. Across the room, Lisa sat rigid, her smile a fragile mask. She clutched a latte, her knuckles white, as a colleague leaned in, whispering. "It's not true," Lisa said, her voice sharp, loud enough to draw eyes. "Someone's framing me. Probably jealous." Jealous? I almost laughed. She thought this was petty gossip, not a blade honed by years of her lies. Her colleague pulled back, unconvinced, and Lisa's eyes darted around, searching for allies. She wouldn't find any. Not today. My phone buzzed. Kevin's name flashed on the screen, and my chest tightened. I answered, bracing myself. "Mom, you seen the paper?" His voice was raw, uncertain. "They're saying stuff about Lisa. Is it true?" I paused, the cafe's hum fading. He was my son, caught in her web, but he deserved the truth. "Read the article, Kevin," I said, soft but firm. "Then ask her." He exhaled, shaky. "She says it's a mistake. But I don't know anymore." "Trust your gut," I said, and hung up. His doubt was a crack in Lisa's armor, one I'd widen later. For now, I watched her stand, her chair scraping, and rush out, her latte untouched. The cafe door swung shut, a dull thud echoing her fall. Back home, I sat in my study, the house silent except for the clock's steady tick. A faded photo lay on the desk. Kevin as a boy, Lisa beside him, me smiling in the background. My sacrifices had built that moment, and she'd torn it apart. I traced Kevin's face, my throat tight. Lisa thought she could outrun this. She was wrong. I opened my notebook, the pen scratching as I wrote. Next phase. The article was just the start. The town was talking and soon they'd act. I leaned back, the chair creaking, and stared at the photo. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows, urging me forward. The market square was alive with chatter, vendors hawking apples and gossip in equal measure. I pushed through the crowd, my basket empty, my eyes on Lisa. She stood at a fruit stall, her posture stiff, her smile forced. The vendor, old Mr. Hayes, handed her change with a curt nod, his usual warmth gone. A woman nearby turned away, whispering to her friend. Lisa's face froze, her hand hovering over a peach. I lingered by a flower cart, the scent of roses sharp. The town had turned on her overnight. The article had done its work, and whispers spread faster than truth. She stole from the fund. A man muttered, loud enough for Lisa to hear. Her head snapped up, but he didn't meet her eyes. She grabbed her bag, hurrying off, her heels clicking on cobblestones. I followed at a distance, blending with the crowd. Lisa's office was next, a glass-fronted building that once shone with her ambition. Today it looked hollow. She pushed through the door, but a colleague met her at the threshold, arms crossed. "You shouldn't be here," the woman said, voice cold. "Board's decision. You're out." Lisa's laugh was brittle, desperate. "It's a mistake. I'll fix this." The door closed in her face, a sharp clack that echoed down the street. She stood there, alone, her reflection trapped in the glass. I turned away, my basket still empty, and headed home. She was unraveling, just as I'd planned. Mary waited in my living room, her coat draped over a chair. "You see the market?" she asked, pouring tea, the steam curling like a question. "Lisa's a pariah now. You happy?" "Not yet," I said, sitting across from her. The tea was bitter, like my mood. "She's still standing." Mary's eyes narrowed, but her tone stayed light. "You're pushing hard, Grace. What's next? A billboard?" I smiled, thin and sharp. "Something quieter. Permanent." My phone buzzed, a message from Jake, forwarded by Mary's contact. "We're done. Don't call." Short, brutal. He'd cut Lisa loose, his business too precious to risk. I showed Mary and she whistled. Cold. Even for him. She earned it, I said, setting the phone down. Lisa's allies were gone, her reputation dust. But I wasn't done. The folder on my desk held more, emails, receipts, a paper trail she couldn't erase. I stood, crossing to the desk, and opened it. The pages felt heavy, each one a step closer to her end. Mary watched, her tea untouched. You sure about this, Grace? There's no going back. I know, I said, my fingers tracing a line of text. The clock ticked, steady, unyielding. Outside, the afternoon faded, shadows creeping across the lawn. I closed the folder, its edges worn but strong, and felt the weight of what was coming. The community center was packed, chairs scraping as people settled in. Lisa stood at the podium, her blouse crisp, her smile a fragile shield. She'd called this meeting to clear her name, but the crowd's murmurs told a different story. I sat in the back, my coat folded over my lap, watching her falter. I've been slandered, she said, voice steady but too loud. Grace, my mother-in-law, she's spreading lies. Out of jealousy. The room stirred, heads turning toward me. I didn't flinch. Let them look. Lisa's eyes met mine, desperate, accusing. She wants to ruin me, she went on, gripping the podium. But I'm innocent. Her words hung, unconvincing, and the crowd's silence was a judgment. I left before she finished, the door's thud cutting off her voice. That night, Kevin showed up at my house, his face pale, eyes hollow. He stood in my living room, hands shoved in his pockets. Mom, what's going on? He asked, voice breaking. Lisa says you're behind this. The article, the rumors. Is it true? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled the photos from my desk. Lisa and Jake, tangled in the lake house. I handed them to him, my hand steady. Look at her, son. I said, soft but firm. This is who she is. Kevin's hands shook as he stared at the images, his breath hitching. No, he whispered, but his eyes betrayed him. He knew. He'd always known deep down. How could she? She lied to you. I said, stepping closer. To us. He sank onto the couch, the photos crumpling in his grip. I wanted to hold him, to fix this, but I couldn't. Not yet. He left without a word, the door clicking shut, a sound too final for comfort. Hours later, I heard shouting from their house down the street. Kevin's voice. Raw and angry. How could you do this? He yelled, the words carrying through the night. Lisa's response was muffled, tearful, but it didn't matter. The crack in their marriage was real now, irreversible. I walked to the park the next morning, the air crisp, leaves crunching underfoot. Lisa sat on a bench alone, her eyes red, her coat wrapped tight. She didn't see me. I didn't approach. Pity stirred, brief and unwanted, but I pushed it down. She'd chosen this path, not me. Back home, I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the number of an old colleague, a lawyer who owed me a favor. My thumb hovered over the call button, the screen glowing in the dim room. The family photo on the mantel stared back, Kevin, Lisa, me, a moment long gone. I pressed call, the ring sharp and clear. The game wasn't over. Not yet. The lawyer's office was all polished wood and sharp angles, the air heavy with the scent of leather and paper. I sat across from Ellen Carter, my old colleague, her glasses glinting as she skimmed the folder I'd handed her. Inside were the last nails for Lisa's coffin. Bank statements, emails, the paper trail of her theft from the charity fund, paired with the photos of her and Jake. This is airtight, Grace, Ellen said, her voice clipped, professional. The funds board will bury her with this. I nodded, my hand steady in my lap. File the suit. Today. My words were calm, but inside a fire burned. This was it, the move that would end Lisa's reign. Ellen slid the papers into a briefcase, the snap of the clasp like a gavel's fall. I left her office, the Connecticut morning crisp, the sky a cold, clear blue. Walking home, I passed Lisa and Kevin's house. A suitcase sat on the curb, its handle glinting in the sun. Kevin emerged, his face drawn, shoulders hunched. He tossed a duffel bag beside the suitcase, not looking back as the door slammed shut. My heart twisted, but I kept walking. He'd chosen truth over her lies, and that was enough for now. By noon the town was buzzing. I overheard it at the market, voices low but eager. They froze her accounts, a woman said, clutching a loaf of bread. The fund's suing her for everything. Another nodded, eyes wide. She's done. I kept my head down, my basket swinging, but a smile tugged at my lips. The noose was tightening. That evening, my phone lit up with a voicemail from Lisa. Her voice was frantic, cracking. "Jake, please call me back. I need you." I deleted it, the sound of her desperation a fleeting satisfaction. Jake wouldn't answer. He'd cut her loose to save his own skin, just as I'd known he would. Back in my study, I spread a legal journal across the desk, its pages crisp under my fingers. The clock ticked, steady and unyielding, as I flipped to an article on fraud cases. My old life as a lawyer felt close again, like a coat I'd forgotten I could wear. The lawsuit would drag Lisa through the courts, strip her of her charm, her status, her future. I'd made sure of it. I leaned back, the chair creaking, and stared at the folder, now empty. Its contents were in Ellen's hands, ready to strike. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters, a restless sound that matched my pulse. The trial was coming, and I'd be there, watching Lisa face the consequences of her choices. The courtroom smelled of wax and tension, its wooden benches hard under my thighs. I sat in the back, my coat folded neatly beside me, my eyes on Lisa. She stood at the defendant's table, her blouse pristine but her face pale, eyes darting like a cornered animal. The judge's voice cut through the room, dry and final. Based on the evidence, the court finds the defendant guilty of embezzlement. Restitution and penalties to be determined. Lisa's shoulders slumped, her hands gripping the table's edge. "This isn't fair," she said, voice thin, breaking. "I was set up." The judge didn't blink, and the room stayed silent, her words swallowed by the weight of truth. I kept my face still, but inside a knot unraveled. Justice at last. She was let out, her heels clicking on the polished floor, the courtroom door swinging shut with a heavy thud. I stayed, letting the moment settle. Years of her lies, her betrayal, her theft, all reduced to this. I'd done it. Not with screams or tears, but with precision, with proof. Outside, Kevin waited by the steps, his hands shoved in his pockets, his eyes red. "Mom," he said, voice low. "I'm sorry. I didn't see her." "Not really." I stepped closer, my throat tight. "You do now," I said, soft but firm. "That's what matters." He nodded, a flicker of the boy I'd raised in his eyes. We didn't hug, not yet. But it was a start. In the park that afternoon, the air was sharp with autumn, leaves skittering across the path. I sat on a bench, the wood cold, and let the victory sink in. Lisa was finished, her reputation, her marriage, her freedom, all gone. But the triumph felt hollow, edged with a quiet ache. I'd won, but at what cost? Kevin's pain, the town's whispers, the years I'd lost to her games. A flyer caught my eye, pinned to a nearby board. Legal Studies Program, local college. I pulled out my phone, snapping a photo of the number. My fingers lingered on the screen, the idea sparking something new, something mine. The wind picked up, tugging at my scarf, urging me forward. I stood, the park fading behind me, and walked home. The flyer's number burned in my mind, a small light in the shadow of what I'd done. The courtroom doors had closed on Lisa, but for me, a new door was opening. The house felt different now, its silence not heavy but calm, like a breath held too long finally released. I stood in the living room, the mantel bare of the old family photo. The space where it had sat was clean, a blank slate. I'd packed it away, along with the pain it carried. Lisa was gone, and I was still here, standing taller than I had in years. I drove to the community college that morning, the campus alive with students, their voices a hum of possibility. The legal studies office was small, its walls lined with diplomas. I filled out the enrollment form, my pen moving with purpose, the ink dark and sure. The first lecture was tomorrow, and I'd be there, front row, ready to reclaim what I'd set aside decades ago. Back home, Kevin knocked on my door, his face softer than it had been in months. "Can we talk?" he asked, stepping inside. The air between us was fragile, but not broken. "Always," I said, gesturing to the couch. He sat, hands clasped, eyes on the floor. "I was wrong," he said, voice steady but low. "About Lisa. About you. I want to fix this, Mom." I leaned forward, my gaze firm. "I love you, Kevin. But I'm done waiting. I'm building my life now, my terms." My words were gentle, but they carried weight. He nodded, a small smile breaking through. I get it, he said. I'm proud of you. We talked longer, the words slow, careful, like stitching a wound. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Later, I stopped by the cafe, the familiar bell jingling as I entered. The chatter paused, heads turning, but the stares weren't cold anymore. Heard Lisa left town. A woman whispered at the counter. Good riddance. I ordered my coffee, the mug warm in my hands, and let the words slide past. Lisa's name was a fading echo, her power over this town, and me gone. That evening I stood on my porch, the Connecticut sky streaked with pink. My keys dangled from my hand, their weight solid, grounding. The house behind me was mine. Not a shrine to lost years, but a foundation for what came next. I turned the key in the lock, the click sharp and clear, and stepped inside. The door closed softly, and for the first time in years, I smiled without reservation. What would you do in such a situation? Leave a comment if you would have done the same as our heroine. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to listen to a new story every day.